Welcome to the Cherry Picker, the horror movie podcast where we like to kill people, but not really. I'm your host, Zack Cherry, and with me as always...
Jesus wept. Eddie of Edward is Truth. Hi.
And today we're covering Hellraiser, the original, released September 18th, 1987. So it's 35 years. A long time. And obviously this is in preparation for the release of the Hellraiser reboot, or it's just called Hellraiser, that's coming to
prequel, maybe?
Hulu. I don't think it's a prequel. I hope not. It doesn't look like one.
requel.
Oh, requel, yeah.
Possibly.
Maybe. There's not a lot of information out there about it, which is good. I'd rather be left in suspense over that, but
let me find out.
That one is the 11th chapter in the Hellraiser franchise, and a lot of people are surprised to learn that, because I think for the most part, a lot of people haven't even seen many of, if not any, of the Hellraiser.
Well, I've seen the first two.
I haven't even seen. Well, I think I've seen all of them except for there was one released in 2018. Which completely flew under the radar for me. So I'm kind of going through them all and watching them over again. Then I'll get to that one just before the new one comes out. But
how many of them are intentional Hellraiser movies, like from their inception?
I feel like
I
mean we can like get into the sequels and stuff in this episode. Like we'll talk about it right now because you asked. Because I don't think we'll ever do. I mean, other than maybe the new one, if it's worthy, and like maybe this Hellbound, the first sequel, because I can't see us ever doing another or just like a podcast dedicated to the other movies in this franchise, because they are pretty bad. But as far as I know, the first four were intentional Hellraiser movies. Those were all at least had some participation by Clive Barker. Like he wrote and directed this one. He was, I believe he was the writer on the second one. I'll look that up, but I know that he was a producer at least on 3 and 4. And there was a lot of issues with the fourth one with Bloodline. That after that he didn't come back, and that's the point where it was kind of a critical and commercial failure. That it just wasn't viable anymore to have theatrical releases. And that's when, I think Dimension Films had already purchased the rights to it, or Disney had, and which was a subsidiary or whatever of Dimension was or Miramax was of Disney. And I guess that was like a big deal back in the day, because people were they rioted a little because they're just Disney representing these horror movies, because they also had Halloween, Curse of Michael Myers, and Children of the Corn. There was a few of them that were in the 90s. Oh,
that period. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So from that point on, I think because there wasn't a new Hellraiser movie from the fourth one until probably the early 2000s, because that's when they started to do direct to DVD. And I know that what they would do is, because Dimension purchased a lot of spec scripts, that they're just well, we're never gonna make this a movie, but maybe since we have the rights to the script, we'll just kind of adapt it into a Hellraiser movie. And that kind of became the formula for at least the next 4 after that until the 8th one. And so because of that, there's not really any continuity between any of them, or even coming from the last one. I know that Ashley Lawrence is in one of them, but has a very small role, so it's not the connective tissue to her appearances, at least in this one and the ones after that, are very tenuous. And then the 9th one, as far as I know, because I saw that a long time ago when that came out, and it is really bad. It looks like it was made on a shoestring budget, because it was only made because I think for the longest time their goal was to remake Hellraiser, or they wanted to have a big theatrical remake. And Clive Barker was always attached, or was planning on writing a script, or he had, and Dimension Films was going to lose the rights, because if you have a property and you don't produce new content for a certain amount of years, then the rights go back to whomever. So Dimension Films was just like, okay, well, like we have to quickly make a Hellraiser movie by this date. So that's what they did for that, whatever the 9th one was called. I think it was like Revelations. So that's...
Is that the one that has Henry Cavill in it? Do you know?
That's the 8th one. And Lance Henriksen from Scream 3 is also in that
he's
one.
Good in everything.
I'll let you know when I get to that in my rewatch.
Nice, thank you. Please do, because I have a theory that Lance Henriksen, regardless of the level of film that he's in, will always achieve the same level of entertaining me.
I mean, that's a very positive outlook to have. I also just found out today, as we're recording this, that Scott Derrickson, who directed Sinister and Black Phone that we've already discussed, directed Hellraiser 5. No, I'm just saying that as a fact. I just found that out today. He posted something on his Twitter.
Oh, okay.
It's all like like a ranking of all the Hellraiser movies.
Oh, yeah, no, I haven't heard much praise being sung in the favor of Hellraiser. Nobody's ever told me, but you got to see Hellraiser 5. You know, like it's never been laid out in that vein. That said, this movie, I remember I was thinking about, I think I said in our Psycho pod that like returning to see the Psycho movie is like returning to like just visit with an old friend.
Yeah.
And I realized when I was screening this movie for this pod, I hadn't seen it in a minute. And I couldn't really even count how many times I've seen it. I think I may have only seen this movie 5 or 6 times, which, considering how long it's existed, and how long ago my first screening was, which I think was my late teens. I think that's when I felt kind of ready. Mm-hmm. And I liked it a lot. But I never watched it to kind of commit it to memory or treated it like comfort food. Yeah. It was more like... And I actually, because I started thinking about like comfort food and like, you know, like it's not mac and cheese to me. It's not popcorn even. It's not. I can't even liken it to cuisine because I don't think of it as like filet mignon or anything like that. But it's more the metaphor, I guess, that works best for me with this movie. It's like a really, really great book that I love reading, but I don't want to overread it. Because I love rediscovering things when I pick up the book after,
that's fair,
5 years or so. And just kind of like go, oh yeah. Like the stuff I remember is great. But then the new stuff, I'm just like, I forgot about that. This is so good. That's how I watched this movie, I realized. So
I thought you were going to say, which I might have even like agreed with, is because you were saying Psycho was like revisiting an old friend, that watching Hellraiser again was like... revisiting an old adversary.
Or resurrecting an old flame.
That especially, yeah. Because something that just upon this most recent rewatch is that like this is a great movie. I'll just put that out there now. Like I really love this movie. There are some issues which I'll get into, and it's very minor. Ooh. But this is... You really have to be in the mood to watch this one, I find. Like, it's dark, and it's upsetting, and it's gross, and it's just, like, it's... like, we talk about, like, horror movies that are fun, and I think this movie just definitely has that capability of, entertaining and being memorable, but I don't walk away from this feeling particularly satisfied in a way that's, oh wow, like great, like that movie made me feel so good. Like I could watch Psycho, I could watch Halloween and Scream, and just like and just like that really that filled me up, and with this I just feel empty afterwards. I feel like I've been drained of my humanity, and it's like literally like sucked my soul up. Like it just very fitting. You don't find that?
Well, I think
it's heavy. It's heavy.
It's definitely heavy.
Yeah.
Like I don't think I'd screen it for just anybody and be like, this is a crowd pleaser. Everybody would love this movie. I don't believe that. In fact, I'd probably be really selective just because I think I'd be upset if I screened it for the wrong person, or But that said, my experience is a little bit more exhilarating than that. But I do have to say, interestingly enough, on the coattails of what you were saying, I was not in the mood to screen it last night when I revisited it. Like I was actually streaming other things just to kind of like unwind after work. And I was just, because I didn't want to just come home and just put on Hellraiser, because it is a lot to take. But that said, after a few hours, and it was like getting to the point where it's like, okay, you need to get to bed soon, and you do need to screen this. So I put it on, and I put it on my laptop so I could just lay down in my bed and just cozy up and watch it. That helped, because I could just, just kind of like hold my pillow and be like, I'm uncomfortable. But I think once I was in it, again, like I said, like it's like you pick up a book for me, and I was just kind of like, oh, I love this, I love that. I mean, before I go into it, should I do a synopsis at all?
Yeah, you can get into that right now.
Okay, cool. Because it seems like we're ready to just kind of like dive in. I'm afraid we'll just graze right past it.
For sure.
And I didn't work too hard on this one, but I worked harder than I have on the other ones of late. So strap in, everybody. When Frank uses a supernatural puzzle box to summon a gang of other dimensional demon sadists, he slips through a doorway to hell, only to be brought back by a drop of blood on the floor. Frank's half-brother, Larry, has moved into this space with his wife, Julia, who discovers the newly resurrected, partially formed body of her brother-in-law and past lover. But when Julia starts killing strangers to revitalize Frank's body so he can escape the Cenobites and their sadistic underworld, she puts her husband and her stepdaughter, Kirsty, in the line of fire. Will this family survive the puzzle of the lament configuration, otherwise known as the Hellraiser? Little gargle at the end there. I don't know why.
Great. Yeah.
Everybody's uncomfortable
Thanks.
now.
Yeah.
Or if you're ASMR susceptible, maybe you enjoyed it.
Maybe.
Anyway, that's what it's about. That's what Christmas is all about, Charlie Brown.
Yeah. I want to, okay, I should like segue this into like kind of the first experience I ever had with this, because when I was a teen, I've mentioned this before, I worked in a video store briefly, and I think even before that, this might have even predated that, but I would spend a lot of time there, and that's probably what led to me like getting a job there. But I remember spending a lot of time, especially in the horror section. So you'd have all the old VHSs that they, how they like would cut the actual like VHS box and then put it into like the plastic cases, and that's how they were all displayed, normally for older releases. So I'd go through the shelves and just look at things, and I'd always see Hellraiser, and the cover has Pinhead on it, or as he's known in this movie is just Hell Priest, I believe. The name Pinhead.
Clive Barker prefers to call him Priest and only Priest, but yeah.
Yeah, the name Pinhead didn't come until later, but
it's a hilarious name.
It's not very becoming of him.
It's like calling Freddy Krueger Slicey Hands or Chucky Live Doll Killer. It sounds like a generic Halloween costume that you like buy at, I don't know, the drugstore in Halloween 4.
Yeah, or just like when you don't actually have the rights to the name, so you have to like give it a name that's more descriptive. Like Ghostface would be like spooky white face with black
Yeah,
robe.
killer. Something like that.
Michael Myers is
sounds...
just like white masked killer or something like that.
Right. And there's no dignity to it where the character has an immense amount of dignity that he carries himself with. But yeah.
Anyway, so it's the cover it has Pinhead holding the lament configuration. There's like chains and all that behind him, and he just has this like very hideous snarl. And I always looked at that and I'm just like, this looks frightening. And also like maybe not, like just maybe a little too intense. I don't like, cause I always like, I don't know if I really want to watch things about demons and stuff. I think I was more prone to like going towards the movies that are more like Halloween and Scream, just like the slashers. So this, like, it seemed like it was within the same realm of those movies, because it was like really highlighting Pinhead, but I'm just like, he doesn't seem as appetizing to me as a Michael or a Freddy or anything like that. And the description on the VHS box, which I'm probably misquoting, but I think it said, this movie makes The Exorcist look like Rebecca on Sunnybrook
Farm.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
So I just and it was intriguing, and I always walked by that, and I'm like, I'm gonna watch that eventually, at some point, but just not today. And I kept putting it off for a long time, and then eventually I couldn't really find anything to settle on, so I'm like, okay, I'll finally get this one, and I watched it, and I was so surprised because the movie itself couldn't be further from what the box art depicted. So it's really a case of don't judge a book by its cover, because this is very much like, it's not a movie about the Cenobites or these extra dimensional demons. It's more about human depravity, and it's like, it does have elements of like a dark fairy tale, but it's a very human drama. And I think that's the part of this movie, and really the franchise, that I connect with the most, that I like the most. Pinhead and the Cenobites are more of just kind of like the extra little pizzazz that makes it pop,
Oh yeah, totally. I mean, well, they're the looming threat, like the kind of otherworldly thing that is so what's the word I'm looking for? I don't know about unrelatable. It's not unrelatable, but it's just, I guess, so disconnected from what we were instructed to kind of occupy our day with, which is the pleasure pain principle, which I think is what attracts a lot of people to, I mean, I'm just guessing, but what attracts a lot of people to BDSM and things like that, playing with that gray area between, where pleasure meets pain, where you can't really tell one from the other. And I'm no stranger to experiences like that, but I'm not going to go into that. But what I will say is, no, but what I will say is just like, it's interesting that something that is so, and I think this is a credit to maybe Clive Barker as an author and a screenwriter, because he wrote the original, I think it was a short story, right? It wasn't even a full book.
It's the Hellbound Heart, or something like that.
Which I wanted to read it so badly before we saw this pod, and I just couldn't. I was gonna get it at the library or at a bookstore, and I just couldn't find the time before, between pods, unfortunately. Yeah. I still will read it one of these days. Maybe when we do Hellraiser 2, I'll have some news for you. One of the credits to Clive Barker is just like taking something like human pain and human pleasure, combining them, but also they're both so incredibly rooted in the human experience, and yet it seems to be the most, I don't know if it's marginalized or just or again, like this most kind of like otherworldly, like monstrous representation within the body of the short story. This thing that is very, very elementally like you or I is treated as like this entire other universe of people who are consumed by the pleasure-pain principle. And I don't know, I think there's something interesting there. That's why, again, another reason it's one of those literary movies. I think I've said this about certain films on the pods before, where there's a distinctly literary feel of like moving through it, where you don't even necessarily have a cinematic experience so much as a literary one, because you get to kind of know the characters and their insides, their psyches, more than you usually do in a movie, in a horror movie, just any horror movie.
It does feel like reading a book.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, may work to its credit, it may work against it, but it's definitely like a story that you get engrossed in. And that's the thing. Like every time I watch this, like I'm like completely like enamored and pulled into these characters. Which,
me too. The characters are great.
But I mean, I guess I'll like say this now. Just kind of like what I particularly noticed on this last rewatch, and that I've sensed before, but I feel like there is, just because it is kind of very descriptive in a way of just like a lot of scenes with these characters, that I feel like the movie could have been a little leaner. Like as it is, it's an hour and 34 minutes, and that's not. Yeah. Like that's including the end credits and beginning credits, because I think that they do like the whole like black screen with credits over top. But I noticed that there was a lot of scenes that felt very repetitive with Julia and Frank, and then with Julia and Larry, where just like they just kept hitting the same beat over and over again, where I just felt like, you could have combined that into one scene, or you could have dropped that all together, and maybe they could have given Kirsty a little bit more focus, because I feel like the first half of the movie is very Julia heavy, and Kirsty's kind of in the back. And I like, not that I have a problem with that, because I think like Julia is such an interesting character, but Kirsty is also a really interesting character, so it's like, it's almost like once like all of Kirsty's scenes in the first half feel very intrusive. Like it's just like, I don't care about her. I mean, like I do, because it's Ashley Lawrence and she's cute and funny, but like I don't care. Like I'm more invested in what's going on with Julia. But then by the time it becomes Kirsty's movie, all of the Julia stuff feels very like, I don't know. It's almost like they really neuter her character after that, because she doesn't feel as effective. She really felt like the villain of the story, and then at that point, she just kind of was this hench woman to.
She felt
Frank.
like the villain to you?
Absolutely, she is the the villain. She is the Hellraiser.
I mean, okay, let's talk about Julia for a moment, because I adore her. I'm fascinated by her, and I love from the moment. Well, I will agree with you in terms of just aesthetic, because like from the moment she's on screen, there is something very severe about that actress's visage, her appearance. Like just, I can't remember her name. I'm looking at Claire Higgins. Claire Higgins has this wonderful, almost archetypal kind of wicked stepmother face to me. And even just like the way they do her hair and the clothes that they have her in give her a very severe.
Well, she's got this like very kind of Annie Lennox hairstyle, like almost like this like pompadour.
Very 80s, like very like working girl. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And and even her makeup, like, because the interesting thing about her though is because when we see her in the flashbacks, her hair is softer, her makeup is in, I think, like more kind of pastel-y colors and everything like that, and it really effectively softens her purely aesthetically, but even her acting is softer. She seems more innocent and kind of like just younger, and everything about where she begins in like her own timeline, like her character arc, and then where she kind of like meets up with us in the present, seems to intimate that she's grown harder, and everything seems to work that way. Now, so on the face of it, yes, I feel like I'm seeing kind of like the wicked stepmother of the story, and the first time I see Kirsty on screen, it's like, oh, it's the Disney princess. Okay, great. Like, but in contemporary form. But what I love about Julia in the first, I don't know if it's the first half, but shall we say the first sections that she's in the movie, is that there is something she seems to be wrestling with for a good long while, or and if it's not that thing, then it's something else. Like, at first it's just the notion that her ex-lover has returned and is basically kind of like a marshmallowy skeleton man who's all gooey and melted and gross. And he's telling her that he needs blood, so she has to bring him victims and kill men and whatever. And she doesn't want to do it. But she also wants him back because he's the only. This is all incredibly relatable to me. He's the only one who's ever kind of like helped her to open up that cavern inside of herself, which felt, I don't know, just the raw sex of it all. Like, I can't be poetic. It's too late in the day.
You can just say he opened up that cavern of pleasure and pain.
Yeah, that pleasure and pain.
Just going back to the themes of what the movie is about. Like, that's what it comes down to. That's what she's she's in this clearly like sexless marriage with Larry, and
even if they are having
none of them
sex,
are none of them are happy. I love the little moments where because everything is so passive aggressive. Like, nobody has like a full on argument in this movie, and it's when they're first coming in and looking at the house, and I forget what it is, but he asks her a question and she just walks away, and then he's just like, shit. And it's just like, it was a very emphatic reaction to like a non-answer. And I've noticed that like they do it a lot in this movie, and then even in the second movie as well. Like, we see it a lot with Kirsty especially. So maybe it's just something that runs in the family. But
I don't know, because I said, like, have you? Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
No, you go.
No, I mean, just in terms of like hanging out with. Maybe I just hang out with more couples than I probably would like to in recent times. But I mean, even like, and this is the thing, nothing like against people in couples, but all y'all, sometimes you got to check your behavior when a guest is present, because sometimes the like, you show too much. I don't know. like the guest thinks, "Are you fighting?" Like, okay, so I need to excuse myself because this.
So are you saying this because nobody else is in the scene except for them? So are we the guest as the audience?
Oh no, yeah. Like, I mean, I all I'm saying is it didn't even feel like that distinct to me, because it just kind of felt really familiar. I just kind of felt like, oh, that's what people are like when they've been in a couple for a long time, and they're just kind of like, they're not sick of each other all the time, but on days when they are, there is no hiding it. Like, they will, answer in a defensive sense, or just curtly, just like kind of clipped, and I feel like there, and especially in the sense that you definitely get the sense that Julia is so incredibly double parked because she isn't happy, and he's just trying. He can't really fathom what she's going through, but he knows something's up. That's one thing I appreciate about Larry, is that he's not incredibly inept at perceiving that things are going on with her, especially in his conversation that he has later with Kirsty at dinner. I think they go out to dinner together, and they're just sitting across the table, and he tells, I don't remember exactly what he says, but he intimates that she's distant. And
that's where he says that she should come by the house and spend some time with her, which incites the whole thing of Kirsty discovering what's been going on.
Yeah. But I mean, God, that's another thing about these people is, like, I mean, we do this often anyway, but I can do such a deep dive, like, just talking about these people and, like, the predicaments that they're in, and, like, how, I don't know, how a little bit goes a long way. I didn't feel necessarily a desire for it to become leaner. I kind of felt, I don't know, I felt like the runtime was adequate. And also, again, I mean, you're talking about somebody who behavior-based cinema, that's one of my total jams. Like, I mean, that's sign me, especially if it's being, like, really well written and really well acted. I don't care if I'm seeing the same moment twice. It'll just give me kind of like, oh, so this is what they do.
Yeah.
Like,
I should clarify. I don't necessarily mean because we see her, bring a different man home every time, and it's kind of repeating the same. Like, that's fine. I liked that because it did progressively get more violent, but also easier for her to do, to the point, like, at first, like, there's a lot of reservations, and by the end, like, the last guy they're going up the stairs, and what does he say to her? I think he says, like, I get lonely. And she's just like,
oh yeah,
we all do. Because it's almost like a montage of her just like going out, sitting at the bar, picking up a new guy, and then we just see like Frank feasting on them, and then there's that wonderful shot of her just lounging in the chair, and I think she's got a cigarette in her hand, or maybe it's like a glass of brandy, or both, and there's just this smile, this evil smile that eclipses on her face, and I love that moment. And that's why I don't know why you say that or question Julia being a villain, because she's at that point she fully embraces the wickedness and the evil of what she's doing. She doesn't care.
I agree
at that
with
point.
that. No, I agree with that, but the way it opens, I can definitely see like the building blocks, like they're setting up that this woman is going to be a villain, because just about like the way she's positioned and the fact that she's the one who seems to be gazing off and out of a window or up the stairs or whatever. She's just so not where she is, so she's obviously not happy. That only makes her relatable to me. But I know that if somebody is corruptible in the house, it's her. Yeah. And I do think she totally drinks the Flavor Aid, at, I don't know if it's the halfway point or whatever, but there's also, it's not like she makes one choice and commits to it and then just is the bad guy like for the rest of the movie for me, because she is different. Like her temperature is different with each man that she brings to the house, and it's even I love even seeing her still have, I wouldn't call it scruples, but still have some kind of reservations when she's in the bed with Larry and Frank is in the corner and she sees him approaching the bed, and she just starts crying out, no, stop, I can't do it, and everything like that. And I'm just kind of like, really? Like, I was actually pleasantly surprised, because I thought she had drank the Flavor Aid. I thought she was like, okay, I'm team Frank for life. And so, but the fact that like her husband, who she does not love, I think she says that much, and who she doesn't even really seem to like, but there's still some sliver of humanity in her that, and there is a case to be made whether it's really about humanity towards him or even just her having to suffer the guilt of making, not only did she live with this man who she does not love and, just kind of like barely be married to him, but now she killed him,
it's
she was a terrible person the rest
when
of her life.
You don't know, like it's a complete stranger that you're bringing home versus the man that you've been married to for, who knows, like 10 years. How, I don't know.
Someone you've got vacation photos with and stuff like that.
Someone who's like, maybe like your livelihood and your financial situation is dependent on, that not that I ever thought that there was any like nuance into that aspect of it, but no. I definitely like it wasn't a complete jump into like full on villain territory. But it did happen, and I think at that point she just wasn't ready. But by the end of the movie, she basically she agrees to it, and she's like, yeah, we got to do this. Yeah. But that scene in particular, like that's probably like my least favorite scene, and not because it's like bad or anything, because I just like the imagery of like Frank coming towards the bed and he's got the rat and he's like cutting it up. Like I looked at that and I'm like, why is that in here? That's so gross.
Oh god.
Like the rats that were pinned to the wall earlier, like that was enough for me, but then for him to like actually be like cutting it up, and I was even thinking like there's like blood all over the bed now. Are they not going to see that? Or is like Larry not going to see that? Granted, Larry is very oblivious to a lot of everything that's going on, but just going back to like the beginning of her turn really is when she first meets Frank after he gets resurrected in the attic there, and you always mention this a lot. It's just like villainy doesn't just come from like the act of doing bad things, but it's also the omission of acknowledging it or anything. And she full on leaves the attic and closes the door and just like hides that away from everyone, because it's just like I'm not even going to let anyone know that he's there, because at that point she's already doing evil by not going to any of her family and just being like, Frank's alive and he's up in the attic and he's obviously like something is wrong.
We need to leave. Yeah. But maybe it's just more relatable to me. Like I don't know, like the guy who fucks real good. Like, sorry to be vulgar, people. That's the last time I'll talk like that on this episode. But the guy who
gives
just
good
knows. Dick. Yeah, that guy. Like, I don't know if I could be Julia today, but I think I have been Julia in different ways in my life. I've never killed anybody. No lives. No one's skin has ever been shorn. No lives have been, what's the word? Like
extinguished.
Extinguished. Yeah, that's the word I was looking for. Yeah. And I've certainly suffered. I've probably been Julia and all the men she sacrificed, like for the wrong guy. Yeah. But I don't know, because it's also her reaching for some kind of life in her. Like it doesn't feel complete. Like it'd be one thing if she had no motive at all, or if her only motive was to get rid of her husband or some kind of thing like that.
I think it was just maybe the search for something for a more pleasurable existence, because I think that her current state of like living and being married to Larry was her own personal hell. So it was almost like here's a new door that's opened up for her, and she's flirting with the idea, like, maybe I can escape this life that is like clearly making me miserable. And that's really the way I see it. Like, it's interesting because they don't actually mention at any point, or like other than like Kirsty just like clearly having a lot of tension with Julia, that it's sort of like a parallel between Snow White or just kind of like the wicked stepmother or evil queen. It is, she does bring up that analogy in the sequel, but I see Julia as more of like the Lady Macbeth character, because she even has like the moment of just like trying to get the blood out. And I love that, like, because she's already covered in blood after she's murdered the first guy for Frank, and she goes and cleans up, because I think that's when she's like carrying the body, like full on, like lifting it up. I was just like, where did she get that strength? Or maybe he doesn't weigh as much now that the flesh has been eaten off of his body. But I just love how she cleans up. She changes into a clean, like, white silk blouse and goes back there, and then like immediately Frank like touches her with his like slimy like thing. It's just like bone and muscle or whatever, and just like, she just put on a clean shirt, come on.
So all you wanted from her was just kind of like a roll of the eyes and a Frank, I just changed. Yeah. But I think that's the thing is, I really appreciate, and I think I've already touched on this, but just in terms of like, you've addressed some logical things here and there, like the rat and the blouse and all that. Yeah. And what it is for me is, I certainly wondered, why is this here? But I think I asked it just in an incredibly enthusiastic way, like, why is this happening? Why is this here? Because I don't know, I feel like you get a lot of poetic license when you're kind of framing your story as this or what contemporary was, but contemporary, like urban folk tale, or something like that. There's a lot more symbolically that I kind of let pass in the name of logistics and everything like that. I don't need it to make as much sense, because I feel like Clive Barker's just reading me a really gruesome bedtime story, and that's that I think I get, maybe I get a comfort from this movie that you don't, but I think it may be my present predicament also. Like, the more I talk about Julia, the more I'm realizing I think my day job is my Larry. So I understand wanting something more, and kind of like where your imagination just kind of goes wild sometimes, a lull in the day, and you're like, boy, what I wouldn't give to just feel good right now, Yeah. So maybe it's a little personal leaking in, but
that's what makes Julia so interesting. Like, that's what makes her an interesting character, and that's what makes Frank kind of two-dimensional for me, because Frank is just fully presented as just being this evil son of a bitch up front.
Selfish.
That they're very selfish, but there isn't any nuance to him. There's no dimension. which is almost like why, like when we get to the second half, when it's the movie's showcasing Kirsty more, and she comes back to the house, and we're really just seeing Frank. He's like this imposing threat, and Julia's kind of like in the back. She's like running her hand through Kirsty's hair, just like she's full on just become the hench woman at this point. Like she's just there to do all of Frank's bidding, and that's something that disappointed me, because I would have rather seen Julia be this more complex villain and her be the one that kind of ultimately is the big bad that needs to be defeated, because she is because we do see her perspective, we do see her experience, and it's almost just because of that I understand, because she is longing for a life that is more pleasurable to her, that I can see why she's doing what she's doing. With Frank, like literally the beginning of the movie is him purchasing the box, taking it home, and opening. We have no idea why he wants the box, just because it's, I guess like this black market item that, like you have to have, like you heard about it somewhere. And sure. I guess it was just more than he bargained for, because it took him to hell. And he escaped. But like, even after that, I would feel like if once you got out of hell, it would almost be like, oh yeah, like I'm free. Obviously he needs to get human flesh so he can go off and like live his life. But even then, I just feel like his whole purpose is just to be evil and do bad things. Like he's not, like he's still, even after he's like gotten his brother's flesh and he's wearing the face, he's still, his agenda is he's just like, thanks for helping me, Julia. Like, what does he say when when the knife goes into her? He's like,
I don't even remember.
Yeah, like sorry, babe.
Something good.
Like, yeah, just
it was so. Yeah. But I mean, that guy exists, so I don't necessarily mind him. I guess lacking dimension, if that's the way to put it. If it's going to create, in essence, a sociopath.
No, that's what I mean. Like he exists, and like I don't like. Yeah. I'm not mad at the movie for him being there. I just would have rather the roles had been switched and Julia to be the one who was kind of calling the shots and being in control, and him just sort of being there at the end, and then her
that
just
would have
being
been
like,
interesting.
Yeah, you know what? Like I've kind of got it. It's almost like she now has the like she's pining after the box, like because like he wants the box back. I don't know why he wants the box other than maybe to destroy it, but it's just like if anything, I would think that the box is the farthest thing that he would want to be anywhere near, because that's the one item that's going to bring him closer to the Cenobites who are looking for him and want to bring him back to hell. So if anything, I could see like more of just like a character arc for Julia, where she would be like, oh, like I got a little taste of this this pleasure and pain. I think I want to experience more. And
that would have been an interesting turn for sure. Yeah. But I think because again, like falling back on the whole fairy tale angle, I feel like what Clive Barker is doing with his two lead female characters here, I really love unpacking this, by the way, because I've never talked about this movie this in depth before. Yeah. I feel like what Clive Barker's doing is using the two women as kind of like models for love, almost like a Goofus and Gallant of like how to love and how not to love, or how to prioritize and how not to prioritize, because they're both finally like at like the crux of the movie, they're both fighting for men they love. Julia's fighting for Frank, and Kirsty is fighting for Larry, her father. She's fighting for much more than, like, she's fighting for her own survival and all that. But really, ultimately, there are men who are whose kind of like mortality and brevity of life really affects both of these women individually, and I feel like Julia is the model for what not to do, and that's why she ends up becoming a henchman, because she completely used the word eclipse about the smile on her face, but what Frank does is completely eclipses her, and all of a sudden she becomes consumed with desire for a guy who treated her terribly, who she knows had bevies of women who he had other experiences with. So she's kind of like a notch on his bedpost. She's significant, but she's not as significant to him as he is to her. And yet she's allowing this consumption to drive her inexorably to commit horrible acts that go against the good in her. Whereas everything that's motivating Kirsty to act is her compassion and her ability to love, her ability to feel empathy for people and to allow them in close enough that when they're in the line of fire, she hurts for them, and she doesn't want to see anybody else hurt, and she also doesn't want to hurt that way herself. So I don't know, I feel like they're like, that's what Clive Barker's doing with them, and that's why I kind of enjoyed the parallel there. But that said, I do think there's a very interesting story, because I find Julia endlessly fascinating. So she literally, I think, arguably, I'd say she's the protagonist of this movie. You know, she gets buried a little toward the end, but for me, I keep coming back to her for, I'd say, easily maybe the first two-thirds. I find her that interesting.
She's the heavy, who's then demoted to the side heavy. I just think,
or is Frank?
But no. Like I get that. Like he is definitely at the end. But I like, again, like I'm not really like he's interesting because it's like he's basically, by the way, that reanimation scene is incredible.
Oh, beautiful.
Some of the best work, like other than The Thing, I think that and just like doing the whole thing and like sort of reverse how they did it. But
so gross.
Yeah, it is, but like beautiful at the same time. And I think that like Frank is interesting aesthetically because he is basically this just like this like anatomical poster of just like the inside of the human body for most of the movie. Right. But I think like once what's the main actor's name who plays Larry?
Larry is Andrew Robinson.
Right. Who we also know from Child's Play 3. He was the barber.
The barber.
the barber at the military school.
So sick. And he's so good. Yeah. I love him.
And he also plays the scorpion killer in Dirty Harry. I think that was one of his first roles. Wow. But he like once he's like becomes Frank at the end, they're like Frank is so much more interesting because it's just like not that there's anything wrong with it. I mean, there's like 5 different people that play Frank because it's like the guy who plays human Frank, then there's like a different voice actor, the monster, too, and there's a different like
the monster Frank,
the different like playing just like the inside of the body, and then Andrew Robinson playing him as well. But I think like once Andrew Robinson kind of takes on the role like where he's wearing his face and all that, like that's when I'm just like, okay, this is good. Like this is juicy, and I love too because I think I just noticed this really this most recent rewatch is because Andrew Robinson, or like at least Larry, I don't know if like that's his real life eye color, but he has blue eyes, and they're always like prominently showed. Like and especially like the last scene where we see him alive when he comes home and he's just kind of like looking up at Julia. But then as soon as Kirsty comes home and she's talking to him, like you're looking at him and he has brown eyes. So just like, that's not, I mean, we already know that it's not him, but it's just like, it was a nice little, nice touch that they put in there just to show us that it's,
it's beautiful. Not to mention like the hairline, the bloody gooey hairline and everything, which I am always, again, if we're talking logistics, I would wonder, I don't, but I would wonder like, Kirsty, why aren't you going to be like, Dad, what's wrong? Did you hurt yourself? Did you bump your head?
Well, I mean, I think at that point, because she was so, like, frantic with everything that happened, and he said, like, I took care of it. So for all she knew, there was, like, a scuffle, and, you know, like, he cut himself. But, no, I lost my train of thought because we've just been going all over the place. But, yeah, like, once he does it, like, once he takes on the role, and he's, like, you know, does the whole, like, come to daddy, and just like the grossness, like I'm just like, okay, I'm fully on board for this ending. I almost feel to a certain point like I mean, I don't think that they showcased the Cenobites too much, but I feel like if they had been in it anymore, I probably would have been like, no, I want Frank and Julia, like I want to see their story, like the Cenobites, almost like at the end. It does feel like we're in a completely different movie now. Like, do you know what I mean?
I do, but the thing is, it's paying off things that have been planted earlier that I'm like, yes, I wanted to come back to these things. So I mean,
I'm not complaining. I'm just saying that they were used the right amount, and I think that in the sequels, and especially like going like probably after the second one, I think the mindset of the studios and the producers was always like, we need more Pinhead. There needs to be more Pinhead, and we need to have him in the movie earlier, because Pinhead doesn't show up. Like, none of the Cenobites show up until, I didn't do an exact like count, but it was well into an hour. Other than like, I think the scene at the beginning where they pick up the pieces of Frank, which I don't even remember if we get a very good look at them, but until we're formally introduced to them when they encounter Kirsty. So it's one of those things where the ending, it did feel rushed, and Clive Barker has even spoken to this. It's just like they ran out of a budget towards the end, so they had to just kind of like quickly throw everything together. That's why the effects aren't particularly well done at the very end as she's escaping the house.
I mean, I'm just riding the wave of Kirsty's performance at that point, because she is so incredibly possessed by power and by defense in the name of self-defense. Like, I couldn't even really follow what was going on. I'm glad to hear that that it was rushed, and that because it doesn't exactly make sense, but again, it's just like, well, what does at this point? But just the fact that she's got the box, and it looks like all that needed to happen initially for the box to activate was for it to like shift up, twist one way, so it's like at a catty corner kind of diagonal thing, and then drop back down kind of, and then that summons the Cenobites. So you would think the way to get rid of them is just to lift it back up, shift it back, and just drop it back into position. Looks like she does that the first time, and she only gets rid of the lead Cenobite, right? And then she's just getting rid of each one of them one by one by twisting the box. Like, oh yeah!
Except
and I guess
for Butterball, he gets knocked out by a
just gets like a threshold falling on him or something, or the closet, like the roof of the closet. I don't know wherever the fuck he is. That's sad. that's really. I'd be like, what? I can't.
So he's stuck on Earth now, or at least until the next movie.
He's got to get a job.
Yeah. Oh gosh. But I feel like the box.
Oh, go ahead.
Like, well, I was just gonna say like the box itself, because it's just, and I especially see this like in every sequel, it gets more complex with like just its inner workings. Like it turns into like this sort of dagger almost in the second one. Like, and there's corner pieces spinning around. Like, it just looks like a very complicated Rubik's cube.
No.
So I do feel like just her, like, cause she was first played with it when she was in the hospital, but then at the end just being like, it felt very convenient, like, oh, why don't I just do this, and like, okay, that worked. Whereas it's like, I feel like every other time anyone's even if you look at the box, I feel like a hook will like fly out and latch onto your skin, like for anyone else. So it's just like
Well, yeah. I mean, they kind of intimate that there are different things you can access other than the Cenobites when she sees that hanging upside down. I don't even know what it's called, but that kind of pink brain monster.
Yeah, no, it has a name.
It has the wacky arms.
It's gross.
Yeah. It's great. But okay, I'm glad you brought up like the hospital room too, because it made me think. I had a question for you at a particular moment when she's playing with the box and the wall opens up and there's just like brick walls leading down a corridor. Would you get out of bed and go down that corridor if the box you were playing with just kind of opened a portal? Would you find yourself just going down that corridor?
I would be banging on the door and being like, can someone get me out of here? First of all, I don't even think I would want to like play with that box at all. Like, I would.
No.
I mean, if her goal was just to get it as far away from Frank as possible, that's fine. But I wouldn't even want to touch it. I'd be like, I don't know what this does. For all I know, like my uncle, who I have not seen in years, who is clearly like dead. He has no skin, and you know Julie is bringing men up to like the attic to kill them. Like, I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't know what it is about this box that he's so obsessed with, but I don't want to know. I don't want to touch it. I don't want to do anything. So I don't know. That whole bit felt weird to me. That, I mean, like, I get that, you know, she just, you know, had this traumatic experience and she ran away from the house and then collapsed. But also, like, why does she wake up in an institution? Like, that felt weird to me. It just, like, of all the places where someone, I mean, you find someone on the street who passes out and that's where you take them.
Maybe the nearest empty bed. I don't know.
I don't know. That
they didn't know where
that
else
part of
to
the
bring
movie,
her.
That part of the movie always felt weird to me. Like, I feel like there's pieces missing, or there, you know, that might be where, if you read the Hellbound Heart, that some of those gaps are filled in to make sense of, you know, I could see if she, you know, went to the police and was just like explaining everything that happened, and they're just like, that sounds crazy. You seem like a crazy person, and you're a woman who's crazy, so automatically, what are we going to do? We're going to put you in a cell.
Oh, I see.
In a padded cell or
but
whatever.
Again, but if I don't know, maybe I also kind of like put on my dream logic lenses when I watch this movie, so everything just kind of feels like, oh, I guess she ended up there. Because all I thought, literally, when she woke up in, you know, the nut barn was and then she picked up the box and started like playing with it. I was just kind of like, curiosity, it did kill the cat, you know, like stuff like that. Like, it's weird. I start thinking in weird tomes or like old adages, you know, like there's always a first time, or I don't know. I mean, and also just in terms of, like, I guess because it is so incredibly, it's got Clive Barker's name all over it. I do oftentimes find myself, kind of like the way we discussed with Jordan Peele movies today, I find myself wondering what Clive Barker must be communicating with this moment or with that moment. So maybe I'm orbiting it quite a bit, but at that particular time, all I can think is curiosity does not go rewarded in this story. And again, like this whole pleasure pain principle, the whole reason you would ever pursue that in the first place would be out of curiosity. So what is Clive Barker saying about innate curiosity in humans? Is it corruptible, or is it corrupting, or is it about growth? Is it about innocence versus experience? I just have so many questions.
I feel like Kirsty has a very interesting and incoherent journey throughout this movie. And I mean, and I think that's a very big part of it, like everything in the hospital there. But even at the beginning, and this kind of like plays into this ambiguity of the setting that I really appreciate, is where is this story taking place? Because
I know
this is, I mean, there's a line that when they move back, because this is like the childhood home of these people. Frank and Larry are clearly American, so just weird that this house that's been in their family would be in the UK. But he says this line about like, oh, it's just good to get back, like to have Julia come back on her home turf, implying that they are in England.
Right.
But then there's like the whole point, like, what is Kirsty doing there? And you know, when she calls the house, which again is like, how did she even get the number? And I love that when like the phone rings and Larry picks up, who is this? That's another instance of just people overreacting to nothing. That this house has electricity and running water and a telephone line, even though nobody's been in there for who knows how long. And she has the number, obviously, and is just kind of like, it's just like, oh yeah, you should move in here with us. Like, you'd really like it. And she's like, you'd like my room. Like, clearly not wanting to live there. And then they mention something about like her, like, I think she just says, this is just something I had to do to like move out there. So it's, and out there, it's so ambiguous as like where they are. And every time you see shots of places, like, cause you see her walking to the house and she's just walking along this river and like staring up at these like bridge like towers or things. So you really get no sense of everything. And I feel like every actor in this movie is British, but they're dubbed over by someone with an American accent for the most part. So it adds to that like, that like, where are we? Like it is very confusing.
Yeah, it's like in Anytown, England, which, I hear Anytown, USA used, repeatedly. But yeah, Anytown, England is a whole other kind of bag. And it does feel amorphous because, I mean, I don't know. Even the dinner party that they have in the house before, like, Julia excuses herself because she's obviously bored out of her mind.
Yeah.
And it's just so funny to watch, like, this American with all of these English friends be so at home, and everybody's having, like, this wonderful time, except for Julia, who is the native, who is in her home stomping ground, but yet she's the fish out of water because where she really wants to be is with, and that's another thing, the family resemblance. I guess that, I mean, it said in the one of the IMDb breakdowns that I used to create my synopsis that Larry and Frank are only half brothers. I guess I forgot that or missed that, but maybe that's only in the short story. I don't know, but it would make sense that they're only half brothers, considering there is no resemblance. The only time I see a resemblance is literally when Frank has Larry's skin on and Larry is acting exactly like Frank. I think he did a great job picking that up. It just makes it more interesting, and I'm just kind of like, what a great performance, what a great opportunity, because you look at Larry and he's literally the color beige embodied. Like, there's nothing obtrusive about him. There's nothing aggressive. I mean, even when he is yelling, like, I would never take him seriously. He could be yelling at me and I'd just be like, yeah, get angry, little man.
Yeah.
But and I'd probably be ashamed of myself because, did I hurt his feelings? That kind of guy. But
so wait, you're saying, like, definitely, like, this is taking place in England?
I mean, that's the other thing about, like, these Clive Barker stories when they're made. I mean, what was this shot in America? Like, where was it shot?
No, this was definitely shot in England. But
okay, this was shot in. Okay,
but that's what I'm saying. It's set up like there's this sort of. It's almost like how we were discussing last week with Halloween, or like on the Halloween Kills thing when we were talking about the original Halloween, and how there's this this otherworldly feeling to Haddonfield because it is set in Midwest USA, but it's filmed in Pasadena, so they've faked that by having the leaves. So it's almost like there's a similar thing going on here where it's shot in the UK, but they're kind of faking it to make it seem like it's in the States, but they're also putting in these clues like, no, we're in the UK, and there's so much ambiguity that it could be either or, that they don't actually commit to one geographical location, and that like adds to this sort of this sense of like it's stressful, like not like overtly, but like on a subconscious level. I'm just like, I need to know where we are, because it almost feels like we're lost in the story. And that's just going back to what I was saying about Kirsty, about how her kind of journey through the movie is very muddy, because I don't know what she's doing there. I don't even know where she is. And she's almost
working
like
at the pet store. Yeah,
she's almost like this fish out of water. She is working at this pet store where the manager clearly just fucks off for lunch and leaves her there with all this shit going on. And these customers with American accents. I love how dismissive she is of, like, she's just like, well, you're gonna have to wait. And that just goes to the homeless guy sticking his hand in the grasshopper tank.
But, the vagrant.
Vagrant, yeah.
But yeah, that's another thing. It's just like the mixture of accents too. Like, it's just again. I guess maybe that it just adds to the dream logic of it for me. Is just like the fact that, like, I don't know where we are. We're in some kind of like area, some realm of consciousness that it isn't really tethered to Earth, and it just kind of makes everything else, I guess, seem more plausible in an odd way. But also there's this weird
Well, I was gonna say just like Kirsty's nightmare, that where she has where there's like the crying baby or whatever, and there's like the sheet and the feathers that just like becomes blood soaked, and because that's just disturbing imagery. It doesn't really connect to anything that's going on, but it's the nightmare ends, at least for us, and this is another thing that just makes it seem like very disconnected, where her boyfriend Steven is the one that has that very emphatic like sling forward in bed, like, I just woke up from a nightmare, even though we still see Kirsty in the background and she's still having her nightmare, which is the one that we just saw. So it's almost like we're going in and out of these these dreams and stuff. So it's just like there is no like the reality or the lines of reality do feel very blurred, even though that everything that the movie's presenting us is showing us that they're not really like it is like a very upfront like linear kind of story. But Clive Barker has done everything like possible to make it like just the waters feel very murky.
Yeah, and also, I mean, like again, like I'm eating up the symbolism because during her nightmare, I'm watching that like white sheet and those feathers, just kind of like I don't know feathers. I mean, you could think one thing like chickens, but you can also think angels, and because it's white, I think purity, I think innocence, and then you see blood, kind of tainting it, and you just think about like experience, lust, murder, like all of the things, like all the color that is filling this white canvas of a bed. And I could go on and on about this movie, but I was going to address something else, and I have no idea what it was. I got caught up in the symbolism. Sorry.
Oh, that's okay.
There was something I wanted to touch on that you talked about before. Oh God, I need to learn to write things down. I didn't take any notes.
Oh really? Wow.
Like I literally just sat there and watched the movie
after
and just
zigzagging all over Halloween Kills, and now
well,
nothing.
It was a very different experience. No, this one, it was just wash me in the blood of the Lamb. Also, I was hoping I might get to see it twice before I dragged my feet to finally screening it before I went to bed last night. But because I thought maybe I can watch it in the morning while I'm getting ready for work, or I can have it on while I'm setting up for this pod or something like that. But neither of those things happened. I just wanted it fresh in my head because again, like because I don't return to it very often, the word murky is actually really, really good because I feel like my memories are like that. I hope I don't see it again for at least maybe another 3 or 4 years because my memory isn't as good as it used to be. So I need less time between screenings to forget. But I'd like to again just revisit it, and just kind of go like, oh yeah, I remember that, but I don't remember that. I always look forward to seeing things for the first time with this film. It's so much fun. But I mean, fun. It's such a subjective word. I don't know if fun is really.
Yeah, this is not a fun movie.
But I don't know. It's also just the artistry behind it. The fact that nobody, particularly, this was 1987, yes?
Yeah.
That it was made. Nobody at that particular time, I think, was particularly. I mean, people were always looking to make horror movies in the 80s, certainly. But because of the way they advertised it, like the way you described the video box, and I can see it like so clearly in my mind's eye when you describe it, because it had that impact on me when I would walk through the video aisles as a kid all the time, too. And just, I'd look at that cover, turn it around, and go, nope!
Well, I mean, I think that's definitely, like, probably because at that time, we were going through sequel fatigue. Maybe not yet. I think that probably came in like 88, 89. But just the fatigue of, because it was like Freddy and Jason and then Michael again were really thrust to the forefront of like, these are the movies. So they probably were like, how do we sell this movie? Well, let's put the face of the Hell Priest on there and make him the biggest element of it. So I am curious like of where the Pinhead moniker started. Like maybe that was like a marketing thing that the studios were just like, oh yeah, and that's Pinhead, he's the new Freddy, like.
Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if it was just created by the audiences. It feels simple enough and related enough to people who may have only had exposure to the VHS cover that, maybe the legend built up around him in that sense. That's just kind of like, who's that? Oh, that's Pinhead, because people who haven't seen the movie need an identifier, and he's got pins in his head, and it makes it easy to remember. But my first exposure to him actually wasn't even in the video aisles. It was in a Halloween costume. I don't know if you had this in elementary school or if they even still do it today. We had Halloween parades in grade school where we'd all go around like the schoolyard in our, separated in the classes with the teachers at the helm.
Right.
And we'd all just march in a circle. Lord knows why. And I guess parents would come over and take pictures of us and stuff like that, the ones who could get away from work or who didn't have jobs. And then we'd like give away prizes. Like we'd all get seated and everybody would give away prizes in the handball courts for like who is the scariest president, costume. What is wrong with me? Who has the scariest costume? Who has the prettiest costume? Who has the most inventive costume? You know, like all that shit. And but I remember there was a kid, so I remember seeing a 4-foot Hellraiser just walking around, and it was a good costume. I mean, it wasn't as like that kind of like weathered leather. It was more like vinyl, and this mask that I don't know. I'm probably remembering it much better than it actually was, but it was this mask that had all of the pins coming out of the skull, and there were like eye holes, and they had made up their eyes so it looked like their eyes blended into the eyes of the mask, and it looked like their actual mouth too, but the rest of it was just the mask, and they just wandered around with this high-collared vinyl, almost kind of Edward Scissorhands looking dress, and they just walked around, and because it was a mask, their facial movements, their expressions were restricted. So they just looked very serious all day and looked like low dark eyelids. And I was scared of that kid for the day, you know? And then I think so whenever I finally saw the VHS cover, no, I'm not seeing that. That's that kid who was in the Halloween parade. I'm not. Don't need that in my life. But that was one thing I wanted to ask you was the Cenobite, the female. That's what she's billed as. Yeah. Female Cenobite. Was it just me, or did she seem particularly taken with Kirsty? She seemed to have a real predilection for Kirsty coming back to hell with all of them. She's the one who seemed to be pursuing her the hardest, like when she just kind of come out of the shadows and just be like, come, I'll show you. Like whatever the fucking line is. But I don't know, I just got a little extra something from her. Like she wanted to make Kirsty like her or something like that. Or maybe there was actual desire behind it. I don't know. I don't know what the laws of the Cenobites and their own desires are.
I mean, I think with the Cenobites, like just the way that, at least within the lore, is that the human aspect of them is forgotten. They don't, because they don't even remember that they were humans. That's an element of the sequel where she shows them and makes them remember that they weren't always that way. So I don't think that there's anything particular that's like carried over. It's not like if you're, you know, turned into a vampire and you're closeted in real life, and then I thought I
was kind of gay.
Yeah. I don't think it's like that. I think that it's just like demons, just like the Cenobites, like in hell, don't really have a preference or really a, you know, probably like an assigned gender either. I mean, even though she's classified as female Cenobite, but I just feel like they're all kind of made equal, I guess. I don't know what I'm saying. I'm trying to generalize something that is probably way more complex than it is, and especially because I haven't really absorbed that much about the Cenobites, like through at least like the movies that I've watched, or at least to remember. But I think that because in the sequel, we do see what they all looked like as human. Yeah. So there are some surprises there, but no, I didn't catch anything in particular that felt any less like, you know, like the other three members of the Cenobites weren't as
maybe it's
sexually
because she's the only other. Yeah, maybe it's just because she's the only other Cenobite who talks also. So the fact that she's pursuing Kirsty with words, and that we can see, like, again, facial expressions, whereas the other two is just kind of like chatter.
God. And the chatter is that's the most frightening one. And when he has
disturbing.
The fingers in her mouth, and that's just like gross.
God.
Like, get that out of there. Like,
that's like the first thing he does when he sees her. Like that is not hi, how do you do? No, I'm not. No, if that ever happened to me, I don't want any like. No, it's a very short list of people whose fingers I want in my mouth, and none of the Cenobites are on it. So,
where are you taking this? But
I'm not.
I feel like if I had to pick one that is like the most disturbing to me, it's definitely that one.
Yeah, he's tough to take.
Yeah.
Because I mean, that's the thing is, like, there's something about him that feels. I just like. I just got like a shadow of Star Wars over my brain and just thought like he's more machine now than man. You know, like there's something still alive there and still. But there's still something alive there and conscious, but barely. Like you wonder like, who is there? And what are you thinking? Are you thinking, or are you just chattering? Like, are you just kind of like going where the water is warm, like as it were? Like, what's your deal? It's so
well. They all I mean, so like Pinhead's clearly in charge, and they're just following orders or whatever it is.
Just kind of following the leader. Yeah. That's a kind of. I always feel bad for them though, because even though. They talk up a big game, like they're going to make you see all these great sights and everything like that. But how terrible is it to just kind of like sit around and wait for somebody to play with a box so you can play with them, So,
well, I mean, I think they have plenty of customers that they can, revisit. But these are centuries of people who have, been sucked into hell through the box.
Maybe I'm just too conditioned to believe that anyone who lives that long is going to get bored eventually and just kind of go, I don't know, torturing people just doesn't have the same spark that it did, I don't even remember why I got into this line of work. I think I'm going to become a shoe designer,
Well, I think that I think that the thing with the Cenobites is that they were all once like people who did kind of play with the box, who eventually became the demon. So that's maybe what would ultimately happen after they've had enough pain and pleasure. And I always feel like all of the whatever we're like, they always say like pain and pleasure is indivisible, but I feel like we're only ever seeing the pain. Like everything that we see, just like they're just showing the bad parts.
Clive Barker
and I know
loves
that like
pain,
in some of
though.
the sequels they do kind of they tease the pleasures as well, but everything just feels like, what is, like if that was your sales pitch when you're just like selling the box, like at the beginning it's like, what's your pleasure, sir? And it'd be like, what does this box do? And they'd be like, well, just to describe it, like, well, can you just give me like a visual? Because you know how like I think in some of the sequels like the box kind of like can flash a thing and show people like a little clip show of everything, and they just show like all like the dismemberments
like
and stuff. Yeah, that they'd be like, oh well, here's like a presentation of what this box offers, and I'd just be like, yeah, I don't think I don't want that. No, I'm good. I'll pass.
I mean, I'd also, I guess there's no probably as humans in the way we're conditioned, we're probably going toward pleasure probably isn't really all that hard for us. Like that is enticing, that's easy, but I think what they're all about is kind of like opening the door to pain, to pleasure that is even greater than that, more, like 5 times greater than anything you've ever experienced, called fun, like that. But the only way you can achieve it is, if we put these clamps all over your body and pull real hard. And also Clive Barker, I think, is really all about that principle. I mean, I'm thinking about like even just the screenplay for Candyman, because I haven't read that book either, or that short story, is like all about like Candyman is relentless when he talks about the pain being exquisite, and even just like the sweets to the sweet, and then there's razor blades in the candy and stuff like, like there's I think that it's a theme that Clive Barker was certainly preoccupied with. I wonder if he still is.
Oh, probably.
Speak to it. Yeah, maybe. I don't know.
Well, I mean, I guess like we'll see with the new movie, just because I know he's producing it or executive producing, so he definitely. I mean, for him to return to the franchise after all this time, is an indicator that like hopefully it's good, like, and that he had some sort of creative input in what was happening, or clearly whatever was presented in the writing or the direction he approved of, that he was like, yeah, put my name on this. But what was I gonna say now, which I forgot. I'm like in the same boat as you. You'll remember. We're going like, I know, all right? Over the place here.
We work too hard. But I do want to say also, I thought about you actually as it was winding down, because I found myself craving. There was like a little bit of an epilogue kind of going on, or just like the aftermath and everything. And I was just kind of like, oh, just give it a Dario Argento ending. Just kind of like, okay, and they're gone. The end. Roll credits. I'm done. I'm ready. So I did have that experience.
I didn't mind the end because it sort of did bring a conclusion to the. Well, first of all, the vagrant.
Yes.
And just like what his role was, and sort
That's
of
hilarious.
And this idea, because at the end it's bookended with the same scene in the shop where they're sitting at the table and the box is now coming into possession of someone new. And there's at the beginning there's a line that he says to Frank, who's just like, "Take it, it's yours. It always was." And that's another thing that, like, similar to Candyman, is just like these themes of like destiny, of just like it's your fate that this was supposed to happen. And it's almost like it's this reoccurring thing where the box eventually comes back to whoever the person is who's the
merchant.
Yeah, which is, it's funny that you say that, because as we learn in the sequels, that's the name of the inventor of the box, or like the actual toy box at the beginning, or it's Le Marchand, but then their ancestry turns into merchant, is like what the last name becomes. But yeah, it's definitely like an interesting parallel. But just how the box just gets circulated among new people, just to keep the cycle going. So I did like how it's, the vagrant was kind of there behind the scenes, just like watching everything, because he had to be ready to like swoop in, get the box, and then bring it to the next person.
That also feeling of "it's yours, it always was." I'm glad you brought up that line, because when I first heard it in the beginning, I was just like, in this screening, I just started thinking about entitlement, and how entitlement coupled with curiosity is probably what leads to the downfall of. That's what ultimately I think leads to the downfall of every one of these people, is an innate curiosity about something and the sense of entitlement to acquisition more information, which is so sad, because it really makes it dark. It makes growth and learning, and education about things that you may wonder about, like really it packs a wall up. I mean, it feels murky in a different way, like murky water, like just very kind of like, it's not nurturing. It's much more of it, just kind of like life is hard. Take it and like it. I just beat my pen off my finger.
No,
but
you don't need it. You haven't been taking notes.
I don't need it. Yeah. I don't have any notes. But yeah. No, I mean, so it's interesting. I mean, in that sense, I think it's a very, very dire story, and maybe that's not the part that I have fun with. But I think everything else kind of keeps me afloat as far as like.
I mean, I wouldn't have minded a sudden ending of just like, the house going up in flames and then walking away like Suspiria style. There's something I do really appreciate and this is like a Kirsty moment that I love, when that thing that like, the slime monster or whatever is attacking them at the end, or trying to get the box, which looks like that always looks hilarious when it happens. And then there's the boyfriend, who just kind of like the most useless character in the movie, Steven, when he shows up at the end there. And Kirsty's already been, like, she's on top of things. She knows what she's doing. And he kind of goes in there and he tries to grab the box from her. And she kind of has this moment where she clasps onto it and she growls at him. She's like,
yeah. She is downright monstrous herself, like in a great way, like in just like a. But I mean, even like when she's arguing with Frank, I think when she first picks up the box and he's like, and doesn't he say something like, "Give that to me"? And she's like, "No." Like, just this defiance. That one thing I really love about Kirsty too, because I feel like I haven't really spoken that much about her. Is she's kind of like an epitomal example for me of courage or bravery doesn't mean an absence of fear. Like, she's afraid for much of this film, but it's about, taking care of business anyway, taking control of the situation as soon as you have your faculties about you, and doing everything you can to try and put the pieces together as soon as you calm down. You got to come down off of the moment a little bit. You got to sleep in a bed in a madhouse, and then you got to escape, and you got to go back and you got to figure out what's going on with your daddy.
We keep referencing this, but because we did for our bonus episode on Patreon, the Cherry Picker After Dark, we did a ranking of all the final girls. It turned out to be like 86, and not all of them, but a lot of them. And this might be a spoiler for that if you haven't seen it and you do want to subscribe and watch that episode. But she placed very highly. I think we had her top tier, and I don't remember what the points were that we brought up for her.
I watched the pod and find out what we said.
Well, I'd have to go back and watch it, but yeah, I just remember being like, it seems right, like that. There's something about her that she's just like, she's very tenacious. She's in a situation where it's just like she's kind of thrust into this hell world of like something that came very suddenly. She has no idea what it's about, but she was very quick to adapt to it and sort of like also like psychologically to barter with the Cenobites and like use that as a resource to her benefit and survive, and just like this offering of just being like, well, I can, if you actually let me go, I can get you this person who's even worse than me because they escaped your clutches.
Who escaped you? Yes.
Yeah. And that's kind of going to like back to like she's almost like reading the ego of Pinhead in a way of just the ego head of just being like, yeah, I think like that might piss him off, and it worked. Like all the other Cenobites were just like, maybe because even like you said, the female one says, maybe we prefer you instead. And
exactly,
that's when Pinhead says like, I want to hear what she has to say. So like clearly like she knows how to manipulate people and demons, and for her own benefit, in terms of survival. So I think she is a very effective final girl in that regard, and definitely does deserve a lot more credit than like you don't like people don't mention her in like top 10 lists all that much. Like it's always like Laurie Strode or Sydney or Nancy. So it's just I just trying to remember what we said about her specifically, but I do like her, but I especially love like the little moments like that where she just like snarls at her boyfriend, just like, I can do it, let me do it. And there's this is jumping into the sequel a little, but I because I watched the Hellbound Hellraiser 2 on the heels of watching this one, and there's a whole scene where she's just like kind of recanting her story of just everything that happened in the first movie, and she just has this line delivery where she's just like, and Julia, that bitch, and it's so dramatic. And then there's a scene
and the crowd goes wild.
And they're leaving, and it's another thing that's like similar to Cotton or Larry Cotton, of just like, it's like shit, because she has a moment like that too where they're like, okay, we're leaving the hospital, and she's like, hey, let me just go get my clothes, and she opens up the locker and they're gone, and she just says shit. And then the scene cuts. It's just like, don't worry, we can get you new clothes. And then the scene just cuts, and they're like outside. And did we really need that? And like, not really, but it was just fun to see her have that response to like a minor inconvenience. Like,
absolutely, I love that shit.
She's relatable. Also, she's because she
totally is.
Yeah, she's saying things that I feel on a daily. We'll just put it that way.
And also, to go back to just the bartering with the Cenobites, I get like old school, like the Odyssey tales, from that moment. It's almost like the mortals having the good sense in the face of their own mortality, like, the threat of their own mortality, when the gods are willing, to like kind of like consume them or extinguish them, and then they just kind of say, wait, I can get you, someone else, someone better. And they'll be like, go on, like and that in this story, the Cenobites are the gods, as it were, because they're the ones who hold all the cards, who seem to have the power. But when you can appeal to their pride or to their greed, that's when you can take some of the power back. And there aren't enough final girls, I think, who kind of negotiate. I really love that as a strength, as a skill in a final girl. So I do appreciate that.
It's almost like it's almost like a level of like trickery and sort of like a Ginny Friday the 13th Part 2 way.
Totally.
Yes. Like I'm gonna manipulate you this way just to get out of this.
Yeah. Because I have this insight into you. Yeah.
And because I'm just reading here because I think because Clive Barker's like I guess his intended idea of like who Pinhead was just like a very like intellectual and articulate character, where it's just like that's why he didn't want it to be like grouped in with like these Freddys and Jasons. So it is funny that like it's to sort of like to present this villain, even though he's not really the heavy of the movie, but just to present this foe or this obstacle for Kirsty, and just sort of like that's something that they share, because I think that like Kirsty is another character who is very intellectual, that's why that like should be able to at least meet him on that level of having the negotiation skills.
Yeah, and understanding what his priorities are. Yeah. And see, that's what makes him a character and not just like a big bad, I mean, that's a bad description of it, because I actually really like big bads. But I mean, or not just a heavy, shall we say. Yeah. He's beyond a heavy. He's a player in this game. And that's even more exciting.
Yeah, he has distinctions that set him apart from being a Freddy or a Jason or a Michael. And absolutely. I think that it's almost like to the franchises, or at least like the earlier films, like benefit that they did make that comparison, but it's also kind of to their disadvantage that's what it's like he's kind of been grouped in as, because now like if anyone was to be like, put a poll out there and just like, who's your favorite Michael, Jason, Freddy, Pinhead, like etc. Pinhead would probably get chosen the least. I mean, like just in terms of Patreon, like because my tiers are set up to represent like all of these characters, and Pinhead is the lowest. It's right. It's the one at the $1 tier, which is all well and good, but it's like this hierarchy of just like what is kind of like considered to be like the biggest, baddest of all of them.
Yeah, you're making me think about an interview that I saw Clive Barker do actually for the Nightmare on Elm Street DVD box set, the black and copper one, in the Nightmare Encyclopedia bonus disc. He was sitting there and talking about sequels. The problem with sequels, I think, is what it's, the link or whatever is called, the thing that you click on. And he... It's all starting to kind of make sense to me now in terms of like just what you've shared and what I've heard before about the Hellraiser franchise, as sequel after sequel popped up. I'm wondering if Clive Barker was actually relieved to just kind of like get the money to to give up the Hellraiser moniker and just let people tell whatever kind of story, or make whatever movie they wanted, and then just put Hellraiser, because it doesn't matter. It's not, because he spoke about steady dilution of the thing that made your material scary and interesting and singular in the first place with sequels. That's the problem when you get to number 3, 4, 5, 6 and everything like that. That's when you have to start kind of like either rediscovering new things about the lore, or really successfully passing the baton from like one really, really strong protagonist to the next, so we can move into other generations fighting this eternal evil. And that's another thing, is that I don't even feel like Priest is an eternal evil so much as an eternal presence. I mean, the only thing I'd say he probably has in common with other slashers is that once that door is opened and you see that particular figure standing there, whatever franchise you're in, you want anything but to be consumed by them, like the way they consume people, whether it's knife, machete, garden tools, finger knives, or the pleasure pain principle hooks from every shadow.
Well, I'm just reading this. I'm just looking at the trivia on IMDb, and Doug Bradley, who plays Pinhead, or played him, said in an interview that he asked Clive Barker how he should be playing the character, and Clive Barker told him to think of him as a cross between an administrator and a surgeon who's responsible for running a hospital where there are no wards, only operating theaters, as well as being the man who wields the knife. He's the man who has to keep the timetable going.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
Yeah, and also Doug Bradley wasn't originally going to play Pinhead. I think when he was cast in the movie or auditioned for it, they said, we have two roles that you could play. You could either play the Cenobite, the lead Cenobite, or you can play the mover, who's I'm assuming he would have been the one who, I mean, there's just two of them. Maybe it was the one who had more lines, who was kind of flirting with
Moving Man 2,
Kirsty or Julia. And he wanted to, he initially thought well, maybe I should play the Moving Man, because I won't have to be in heavy prosthetics or makeup, so I'll be more recognizable, that I'll get more jobs in the future. And I don't think that would have really made an impact on anyone in the movie. So just him kind of opting to play Pinhead, really that, even though that kind of became the crux of his career and what he's known as, he's probably benefited off of it quite well, just in terms of conventions and
I was gonna
whatnot.
say.
So yeah, it was the more lucrative choice for sure, and just the notoriety from it as well.
Yeah. There's more to play that too. You never would have gotten a description like that for Moving Man 2. Yeah.
Yeah.
Clive,
Although I do enjoy those
Moving Man
interactions between the Moving Men, because that's where you have the more just passive aggressive Julia, just doing her thing, and then Larry just being okay, I guess I'll get it, and the two useless, clearly can't even get this bed up the stairs there. But I mean, to be fair, that is a very intricately designed house.
Yeah, it is.
Clive Barker was even saying it posed a lot of problems with the cinematography.
So.
They had to be creative just in terms of filming, because a lot of the shots are in that stairwell. We spend probably most of the movie in that stairwell, just going up and down the stairs, and it has this sense of just being this impossible house where I don't really know the geography of where anything is inside of there. There's seems to be 4 or 5 different floors. You see it from outside as this huge house.
Right. Mm-hmm. And that's another thing that just kind of lends itself to the dream logic of just a big house and there's a wall there. Now it's there. I can't. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I embrace it. It, but I totally agree. It's an amorphous house.
Also, we haven't even talked about the score.
Oh, yeah. Just opera. I mean, a melodrama that is on an operatic level. Let's put it that way. Mm-hmm. It is. I know what movie I'm in when I hear that score. I absolutely adore it.
And this is Christopher Young. He also scored Sinister. We did a podcast on that earlier this year. He did Sinister. He did this in the sequel for Hellraiser, at least the first two. Mm-hmm. He did the first 2 Grudge movies. He did Urban Legend. Funny enough. I know there's another big one I'm forgetting, but I'll try to see what it is. But yeah, I just this is another thing where this is a top 10 score for me. If we're, if we had to compile a list of just what are the top 10 horror movie scores, and there'd be Halloween, Psycho, I'd say Candyman, Hellraiser.
Yeah.
I don't know, what are some other ones?
I'm a big fan of Carrie.
The Carrie score?
Yeah, totally. Question. That's DiNaggio. But do you have it on LP?
I do. I have the 1 and 2.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Fun stuff. Yeah, I just can't see it behind you.
I don't think
those
it's.
Of you who are watching.
I don't think I have it on, because the one that I have for the original is just like it has the original key art. So I do need to get the one that's I think available from Mondo, or something that has like the more, I think it's like the profile of Pinhead. Yeah, I don't know. I'd have to listen to the Carrie score a little bit more to know if that.
It courses through my veins. I could hum it for you right now, but I won't because we're doing a Hellraiser podcast.
Yeah, I mean, like the Suspiria theme, probably the Thing.
Wonderful.
Yeah, I don't know,
arguably
that's
Season of the Witch.
I mean, probably, because I actually do like it a lot more. I mean, not a lot more, but I it just slightly edges out the Halloween score. You know what? Now I'm just thinking, like, if they were, now we're just getting completely off topic, but if they were to like do a Halloween 2018 style Season of the Witch, and then John Carpenter came on and they're just like, we want you to rescore, like do essentially what he did with the score for the original Halloween with 2018, but with Season of the Witch. Like, that's something I need to hear now in my life. So who knows, maybe that'll be the next Halloween movie after Ends, if they decide
Dr.
to.
Chalice, the through line, the arc of Dr. Chalice. Yeah, I'd watch that. I think there's an audience for it. Even if it's just a Netflix thing. Yeah, I think somebody should do it.
Theatrical. Don't be silly.
Oh, come on.
Anyway, I feel like since we're just straying off topic, is there anything else that you wanted to mention?
No, I think I've said it all for now. I could say more, but I don't want to go off on more tangents. So I'm satisfied with what we've said.
All right, let's get to the cherry picker then.
It's not like we killed people on purpose.
Okay, so first we got to pick a cherry on top, and I think that we're at least on the same page that it's going to be one of two people. So I'm going to say, I'm actually going to say Julia, because...
Really?
Yeah, because I'm just... Even, like, because, even though that you don't think that she's a villain, like, just, like, the villainous, like, aspects of her character, that's what I like, eat up. I'm so interested in her story. Like I love Kirsty and I love everything that she does, but I mean, like, she has another movie, and hopefully, like, I don't know if she's ever going to come back again. Who knows if she's in the new one, but I just, when, like, the parts that, like, excite me about this movie the most, like the one that make me giddy as I could be, like, during this morose fair of blood and guts and dead rodents. The thing that elates me and lifts me up the most is just Julia just going through the motions of becoming her true evil self. Like, that's the story that I eat up the most. So what's your case for?
You say that.
Yeah.
Well, I thought for sure that you were going to say Kirsty, and that I was at least going to give Julia a shout out, the way sometimes I do with characters. I just want it to be said that they were a contender. Okay. But I'm totally game for Julia and letting Kirsty be the contender. She certainly deserves to be up there. But Julia. I'm Team Julia. I mean, I don't root for her, but as far as the watchery of it, I do get a little bit more.
I root for her. I mean, like, that's the thing. Like, I'm still want her to get away with what she's doing, only for the reason that means I get to see her do more of it. So and that's what makes such a great...
You with your alternate ending, yeah.
Yeah, that's what makes such a great villain. So Julia it is.
Yay! I'm so happy.
Now, last week, we asked you who deserves to die the most in Halloween Kills. Mm-hmm. I nominated Mulaney Girl.
Yes.
A.K.A. 1978 Trick-or-Treater. You nominated Christy, A.K.A. 2018 trick-or-treater.
2018 trick-or-treater.
Yeah, funny how that happened.
Yeah.
Based on votes cast across Patreon, Instagram, and YouTube, there's a lot of votes.
Oh.
This might be the most votes people cast for a cherry picker
cool.
to date. I could be wrong, but 633 voted for Mulaney Girl. Versus 143 for Christie.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
But
People
yeah,
turned out for this one.
They really did.
I think the pictures on YouTube probably helped the visual.
That's been a blessing too, because I think for the longest time people were like, I don't know who you're talking about. It's funny because I put the pictures up here. I'm gonna read the comments here because a lot of people. I mean, I won't read those ones in particular, but some people were just like, I don't know who any of these characters are. Which, I mean, like, did you not watch the movie? But to be fair, they are smaller roles. But yeah, Mulaney Girl definitely, like, she played it with, like, bitch face turned up to, like, she was just kind of scowling at everything. Like, that was the direction that David Gordon Green gave her. Just like, you're just a mean bully, so just look mean.
Yeah.
Fuck that.
So that helped. I mean, she swept. I mean, again, when you were describing her, I was just like, as you're describing the lick of the jawbreaker, I know exactly who.
And I couldn't tell. Did she throw it behind her, or did she smack him in the face with it?
I can't remember.
Because it looked like she could have done either. I don't know. Yeah, she was putrid. So Mendejo says, all of them. I don't know if I've ever been more frustrated by a horror movie. LMAO.
People really turned out to hate this movie too. I mean, there are people who are angry, who are still angry. I think the pain is still fresh from the screening. You know, I guess the initial screening of 2021. Yeah.
But there are a lot of people that do really like it, and it's funny because there was a lot of people who didn't like 2018, who I was surprised to hear. Oh, actually, this is so much better. And then there was a lot of people who loved 2018, who I was even like, you know, have arguments with before Halloween Kills came out.
Sure.
Of just being like, why it's such a good movie, and I'm being like, not really. But then they would see Halloween Kills and be like, oh, that was terrible. I'm like, yeah, I know. But that's kind of like, that's the trajectory. I just see them like taking all the worst things from 2018 and just magnifying them in Kills. So anyway, that's just me. Silent Saturn says, my vote goes to Christie, as the way the Mulaney girl licks Lonnie's candy gives me a strong Helga and Arnold vibe, and I think she might have a secret crush on him. In my headcanon, she's Cameron's mother. Really though, I would have nominated Hawkins, who kills his partner due to sheer stupidity and not only gets away with it, but also gets a pat on the back and Laurie's affection. Absolutely hate him.
Wow, I mean, that's a fair set of points. I just don't have that kind of vitriol for him myself, so that's why I didn't vote for him.
I do appreciate the Hey Arnold reference, though.
Yeah, right? I never watched the show, but I got the reference. I was too old.
Oh, come on.
How old was I when what year did that drop? Like,
I think that I would have been, I was probably grade 6, 7. I don't know. I'd have to look it up to see. So, you know, I would have been, how old are you in grade 6? Like 10?
Okay.
11? I don't know.
So that's like 90, what?
96?
96? I was 16. I'm not.
Come on! You can watch cartoons at 16.
No, you can watch cartoons, but not like Nicktoons. No, I didn't do Nicktoons anymore at 16.
Oh, right.
Yeah, I moved away.
You were more like Captain Planet.
No, I was more like, I was still doing like Tiny Toon Adventures and Animaniacs. No, He-Man. I cycled back around like in my late 20s and was ready to watch Masters of the Universe again. Anyway, off topic. Keep going.
Oscar says it's a tough one because they both are such a small character. I will go with Mulaney Girl, as Christie and her gang made me laugh at least.
Not me.
Grant Dempsey says, my heart and conscience desperately yearn to vote for Tommy Doyle.
A lot of people said that to me.
He was a contender for sure.
He was, but
the way that he just riled everyone up for no fucking good reason.
But he also dies. Like, we do get to see him die, so I don't really crave any more than the movie gave me. Even that didn't satisfy me, you know?
Yeah. Socked says, Christy, she was way too pretentious for her own good. She could stand to take a chill pill. And is a chill pill like a knife to the gut?
No, but I wish. I'd prefer if she took either. Really, I don't.
Yeah. Tyra says this is one of the most forgettable movies I've ever seen. I don't know who either of these people are. Hold on here. Heather Utterback says Tommy's stupidity got on my nerves, but between the two, Christy, they thought of nothing of Michael being at the playground, and there was their friend with his head cut off. Annoying. I don't know if his head was cut off. I think we just saw the mask. But it was bloody, so maybe he did.
I
would have liked to
like
see
a
that
week and a half ago, and it's gone.
It's gone. Yeah. Nothing's returned. Lloyd Gray says Mulaney girl. It has to be. She has a face you just want to punch.
Oh, that's so mean.
But
that poor actress.
But she accentuated that because she scowled a lot. But
yeah, she made herself mean face.
Yeah, she was good. She's good at making herself appear to have bitch face. But TBH, the whole movie should die. I love Halloween, but this one is terrible.
Wow.
You'll love this. Cosmic Urgency says Allison.
That's all?
That's it,
no explanation?
Yeah, that's why I said you'd love it.
Oh my god. Yeah, I'm aghast. Okay, I don't even understand, but I don't need to. Go
Thomas
on.
Baker says Mulaney girl. And I think that's it. Yeah.
Thanks, guys, for voting and for commenting. That's amazing.
Yeah. For turning up. Anyway.
Yeah.
Who deserves to die the most in Hellraiser? Yeah. I mean, maybe this is me just being basic, but I'm going to pick Uncle Frank because he's just shitty. He's just evil for the sake of being evil. And he's just gross with his niece. That's fucked up. He's a bad housekeeper. I mean, even though he's obviously been dead for some time or whatever, and shit's been nasty there, but this is your family's legacy. That's your mother's house, and clearly there's some resale value in there, and you're just treating it like shit, like it's a dump. So yeah, no good. And yeah, come to daddy. Yeah,
that is gross.
Yeah,
that is disgusting. But it's a great tell. If you intentionally want to give away your identity just to instill fear in the leading lady, go for it. But all right, mine. I get my first choice, which is Moving Man 2. I just find him repugnant. I don't like any of the lines that come out of his mouth. He's a great opportunity for the other characters, kind of as a sounding board to just kind of see how they deal with a guy like that. That's the only kind of interesting thing about him. But he, as an entity unto himself, I would never want to see more of him. I don't want to see a movie about him. I don't want to see him in the sequels. Yeah.
Unless he gets killed, obviously.
No, he needs to be killed in this movie. He should have been killed in this movie.
That's what I mean. You don't want to see more of him unless he's on screen.
Yeah, unless he's dying in this movie. I don't want to see him die even in a sequel, because it's no, you shouldn't have brought him back. He's kind of everything that Priest isn't.
I just want to clarify. This is the one who whose comments, the one who has most of the lines, and says
which ironically,
she has her mother's looks and
all the oh my god, every one of his lines is disgusting, but he's also putting his foot in his mouth, but then he just keeps talking. I fucking hate it, and I think it's ironic that he's called Moving Man 2 when he's the predominant one of the two of them, but whatever.
Well, he's the underling.
I wonder if they were like the lines were split between the two of them, and the other guy just didn't learn them or didn't get the right script, so they just said, "Well, I guess you're saying all the lines then." I don't think that really happened, but I just wondered. Moving Man 2, he's gross, he's disgusting. Ew.
And they couldn't even do when you hire a mover, you expect them to move. Like the person who hired you should not be assisting you to move a
instead
mattress.
Of sexually harassing the woman of the house, the young lady,
and then asking for a beer. Like you've literally just started moving the thing, and it's just like, I think we need a break. Got any beer?
And not even surreptitiously casting glances at the bodies of the women in the house, like just full on balls out, gross me my face off. Like I really wish he would have picked up. Now that I think about it, he would have been a great candidate to pick up the fucking lamentation puzzle box thing.
Yeah, the lament configuration. I also just realized that the mattress itself, it's such it plays such a huge role like in this movie and the next one, because that's where Julia dies. And actually that's a question I had for you, because she's when we see her body, she's on the mattress and she's got the lament configuration and she's sort of like chained to it, but like when she's stabbed, they're in the stairwell, so it's like, did we miss something? Like was she placed on the mattress, or did she crawl to the mattress?
Zach. Dream logic.
Well, I'm just saying because this plays a bigger role into the sequel, but I just noticed it's funny how there's it's almost like what they did with Halloween Kills, where there's so much emphasis put on the fucking stethoscope of the doctor's costume, where it's just like, I forgot my stethoscope, and it's just like, and then I forgot it again in the sequel, and that's what I'm gonna use to try to kill Michael. Whereas in Hellraiser, the mattress is like this prop that it just seems so insignificant, but it's going to play a larger role in by the end of the movie, but also in the sequel as well. We'll just leave it at that without giving anything away. So anyway, those are your nominations. You can pick Uncle Frank or Frank Cotton. I like Uncle Frank better.
Lawrence? Isn't their last name Lawrence?
Kirsty Cotton?
I thought it was Lawrence.
No,
I don't know.
Cotton.
One of the synopses that I read said
the actress who plays Kirsty Cotton's name.
Oh, okay. Somebody made a mistake.
Lawrence.
Somebody made a mistake.
It happens, people do make them on the internet, believe it or not.
Yeah. Don't trust everything you read on IMDb or the Wikipedia.
Yeah. The Wikipedia.
That's just a little advice.
So those are your nominations. You can vote Uncle Frank, or you can vote Moving Man number 2. And those polls will be up on Patreon if you're a subscriber there. Instagram. Our Instagram page is at the Cherry Picker Pod, or on YouTube. Channel is the Cherry Picker. Subscribe.
Yeah.
And also a shout out to our new Patreon supporters. I want to welcome Jean-Philippe Arsenault, Mike Shug, Ruby 1997, Isaiah Belcher, Wyatt Williams, Josh Montenay, and Timothy Ryan.
Yay!
So welcome
to everybody.
Aboard. Thank you.
I waited until the end because I
noticed
you when I.
you were very good about that this time.
It was so hard. I just want to cheer for everybody. So this is for everybody. Yay! Thank you. Welcome.
Yeah. And also a big shout out and thank you to Andre Felix, our editor of the podcast. If you're new to the Cherry Picker, just know that you can watch these as videos on YouTube. And also, if you are watching us on YouTube, you can also listen to them as podcasts. The RSS feed link is in the descriptions down below. So whichever format is more conducive to you. I prefer myself to, when I listen to podcasts, to listen to them if I'm doing like other things, going for a walk. How about you?
Actually, I was listening to a section of the Halloween Kills pod earlier today while I was getting ready. Just, I like to check in and just kind of like see how we sound and everything. And I found it particularly arresting because I do watch them. But just to listen, I was just kind of like, well, we sound like real podcasters. So
I know. It doesn't feel like it, but...
but I mean, just conversing and, when we're actually like making a point, or even when we go on a tangent, like there's something lovely and kind of like, especially because all of this leaves my memory, or most of it leaves my memory after we yell cut and,
once we stop recording, for sure.
Yeah. So listening to it again, I'm just kind of like, wow, this is like, I really like the thoughts being shared between these two. And that's a really funny observation, Zack Cherry, like that kind of thing. It's fun. I don't know. I like it.
Yeah. And sometimes I listen to myself back and I'm just like, get to the point already. What are you doing circling around there?
And I'm like, stop laughing, Eddie.
But if you do want to support us on Patreon, Pinhead tier gets you early access to all of the episodes. They're usually released Thursday or Friday before the regular Tuesday release date, so you'll have that. And also, if you subscribe just a few tiers up at Freddy Krueger, you'll be able to access our bonus episodes, such as the Final Girls Ranked. We also did Buffy seasons 1 and 2 separately. We'll eventually get through all of that series. And this month for October, we're going to be having some fun with the Halloween franchise, where we're going to rank all of the side characters.
Marginal
from all the movies.
characters.
The little fun ones. Who knows who's going to show up on there. But if you're looking for extra bonus content from us, you can get that on Patreon. But if you also want to follow us separately on social media, Eduardo, where can they find you?
They can find me on Instagram or YouTube at Edward is Truth, one word, traditional spelling, Zach. How about you?
And you can find me on Instagram at RetroBitchface, all one word, and on Twitter at ZachCherry8, and on YouTube, Zack Cherry. That's with a K.
It is.
Anyway, what do we got going on next week?
I literally had to look down and read the note.
Even though we mentioned it like 5 times in this podcast.
I know! It just didn't register. Okay, so Candyman. I don't want to sing the real song. I thought
you were like starting with like a Betty Davis.
Candyman! She's not in it, but it wouldn't hurt.
Which is funny that we're doing like Clive Barker back to back, but the reason for Candyman is that it's 30th anniversary next week, and we did Hellraiser this week because the new Hellraiser is coming out, so it just happened to work out that way.
Clive Barker's year,
it's the year of Clive Barker. So anyway, thank you for watching, thank you for listening, and we will be right back.